think I'm making a video. So the Dopey Pyrrho had a live room, and I did happen to catch it live, and I did happen to I did make a video, but it's a little bit too complicated when it's live, and you can't play it a little faster, and so it just makes a mess. So I figure I'll just do the little part of it that matters here, probably. I don't know how much it actually matters, because Pyrrho doesn't make very, they're not thoughtful and precise statements about reality. It's all just touchy-feely, mushy, ambiguous, loose rubbish. Yeah. So it does make him dislikable.
Don't drink any of the information. Just take a dive in. And yet, Heitlade, for example.
So again, he says, don't drink the information. And so, you know, the problem with him and Heitlade is Heitlade was having what's called a rationally serious conversation, trying to get to a resolution of an issue. Is it black or is it white? What is it? And he thought the idea was, is I present evidence, you present evidence, and we show that your evidence sucks, my evidence is great, you lose. And instead, Pyrrho wants to play, no, we're not really doing trials. No, we're just crying wolf. And then we watch the people come out, and then we cry wolf, and we watch the people come out. We just talk about how much grass gets stomped, and, you know, that, well, it's good. We got, all the people got fresh air because, you know, we cried wolf, and, you know, instead of staying cooped up in their houses, they got some fresh air. I mean, some ulterior motive kind of bullshit that just has nothing to do with the fact that you should be recognizing that crying wolf is bullshit, wasting people's time is bullshit, pretending to have an argument when you're not really arguing. You're just trying to provoke argument because you like watching arguments. You don't like resolving anything. You just want to watch arguments. It's your entertainment. You're just watching a fail video, for example. That's all. You're being entertained by it, not instructed by it, because you're not learning anything useful. The whole, it's like you're creating the problem by, yeah, you keep crying wolf, have people stomp a pathway to the sheep field, and then it ends up, water goes down it and erodes it, and then you start claiming, look, it's global destruction. It's, you know, and part of the destruction is of your own making, your own waste perception, your own lack of understanding about, first, any urgency to resolve anything, and the fact that resolution is efficiency. Getting the right answer is the road to efficiency, not getting wrong answers. Wrong answers are the road to inefficiency. Bridges to nowhere.
Former dear friend. Kind of being a little hyperbolic and sarcastic with the deer, but he was a friend. He was a good friend of mine, I thought. Whatever. But
whatever way, yeah, you know, and that's the critique of your videos. their sound fluctuations are just so broad. I mean, you're mumbling it one by mumble, and it's way too loud and mumble, you know.
He said, you know, it was insulting and trollish that I would be here to just describe ideas and try to understand ideas of others. You know?
Yeah, well, that's not really how you put it, and frankly, they can be understood because they're just so obvious. So, in a sense, I mean, you know, he sits there and watches insane people. What are you watching them for? Because you like to see them catch each other on fire or something? There's nothing you're going to learn. They're crazy.
Be able to describe them and to think about them, but not to convince you, right? I'd be more likely to get convinced. Not very likely as well, but just as it turns out, I mean, I'm totally open to it.
I'm totally open. You're not totally open to anything because evidence doesn't mean anything to you. The only thing that means something to you is you drew a conclusion when you were 13 years old or whatever the fuck it was. It was some sort of religious ayahuasca moment or whatever the bullshit is. And you have this perception that somehow there's a redeeming circle of bullshit that makes all this crap make sense. And as long as the evidence isn't pointing to something that's part of that circle, you ignore it. So if the evidence isn't pointing to your fucking circle or bullshit, you just say that evidence doesn't mean anything. You're just a religious kook, looking for justifications for your kookery. You really should be part of the electric universe, because that's exactly what they're doing. They're trying to make the physics conform to what they wish the world was, not what the world actually is.
But also that I would not try to convince others is somehow trollish, or, I've tried to wrap my head around it and think, well, what could I do? Is it really like morally better to, if you're going to make videos, to make them consist just of things that you want to convince other people to think?
Yeah, they should be as real and as honest as possible, and they shouldn't be where, well, I'm just going to play devil's advocate, and and I know the truth, the evidence is really dramatically points in one direction, but I'm going to pretend that this fringe idea somehow has the Goldilocks theory really does have some merit somehow, so we have to conclude it in the conversation, and we have to let the Goldilocks advocates sit up and make speeches about Goldilocks. No, that's just a waste of time, and you know it. You're, like I said, you're just like the spectacle of conversation and debate. You don't want it to actually resolve any questions, because all of your wishes and hopes, are going to be on the shit end of that stick. A real fair fight, and your magical world crumbles. It's all facade. It's all paper mache.
Because I either don't think that way, or I'm the kind of person that would like to think that I don't think that way, where I'm not trying to convince other people of things. I just want to make you hey, here, be aware of this, because I want to see how you react to it. So I'm hoping to go.
Yeah. So I'm just going to keep straw manning you with bullshit and nonsense. I'm just going to nitpick and naysay forever and ever and ever and ever, because I really don't want to live in a world where we recognize the truth, because that if you really do that, if you look at it with clinical eyes, we're garbage, and you just don't want to say it. You don't want to admit it's garbage. Every bit of the game is made out of garbage. You don't want to know that as a fact, even though you're too logical not to recognize, ooh, it sure does look that way. You're just pretending.
Well, what about these ideas?
It's all you're just pantomiming through your existence, because the real world is too dirty. You're doing what Matt is doing, just living in a silly little delusion. La 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 la. A little wonderland of Whitehead and other bullshit. Pseudo-religious mishity-mushity.
Sometimes it's not even my ideas. I'm like, do you know about these guys' ideas? I see you, because to me ideas are like chemicals, and so there's different reactions. All paired, any two chemicals and any other.
Yeah, some chemicals are just toxic. They're just poisonous. And that's all they are. They're just poisons. They're just viral poisons. They're so stupid.
Chemicals, they all have these different kinds of reactions, and there's patterns in the reactions, but so I'm not trying to turn you into my kind of chemical. I'm more...
Yeah, well, again, then why don't waste my time, okay? Frankly, if you don't think you have information that's real and some sort of logic or evidence to provide at trial, then why would I give a fuck? What use is your testimony? You're just going to come into the courtroom and sit there and start talking about your fantasies and what your favorite movie is or something, and just go fly off on a tangent. Well, some of us are trying to do something real. We're trying to get somewhere with our existence and our conversation, trying to resolve a point. The fighting isn't just for the fun of it. It's because there's something in the balance that matters. Shithead. And your trivial, I just like to watch sword fights.
How different chemicals react. And somehow that's... I just don't get it. Why would you want a million people with a million different perspectives to all be trying to convert you?
Because there's a right answer. There's not all these different perspectives. Only by your idiotic logic does that make sense. Is that efficient? To claim every path leads is the straightest line. Every path is the straightest line. No, every path isn't the straightest line. One path is the most efficient. One path has less crocodiles and less boa constrictors and less tiger traps and less snap traps and less... Yeah, one of them's better than the rest. You're buying tires for your car. Guess what? All the tires aren't equal. Yeah, some of them are better than others. They're made better. Some might kill you.
And I guess you're not hoping they propagandize you, but you know they're going to if they all are like out to get a bunch of converts. See, I don't even really believe...
Yeah, and those are the people you don't bother having a conversation with. So the people who are frivolous and trivial and are just arguing for the sake of argument, like you, are a waste of my time. And clearly the idiots who are going to lie and use fake evidence and just keep bringing up fake evidence, even though it's been debunked right in front of their face and you saw them. You saw it debunked right in front of their faces. They're going to, 3 years later, they're going to bring up the same argument again. Even though it was right in your face, they saw them get debunked. Because they're fanatics. They're useless. They're not having an honest conversation. They're not honest lawyers. They're dishonest lawyers.
Possible. I believe that, like, when you have somebody like Thunderfoot or the Amazing Atheist, they didn't convert a bunch... The Amazing Atheist didn't convert a bunch of kids into, you know, his fans. You know, he had something they were like, oh, yeah, there's something...
No, yeah, that's right. That's right. People want to hear, okay, they want confirmation. So they have dumby, stupid, idiotic ideas, and then there's people who pop up and will confirm their lies and their nonsense, and that's all they're looking for, is somebody to confirm that it's okay to be a liar, it's okay to be an idiot, it's okay to be cruel, it's okay to be stupid, it's okay to be a nihilist, whatever the bullshit is. And yeah, and why shouldn't somebody point to that and say, gee, that's goddamn sucks. Why are you doing that? Why are you also perpetuating a lie or perpetuating the propaganda? Why are you supporting it? And that's all you're kind of doing. You're just supporting any kind of dopey notion, any kind of insane reaction, any kind of blah, 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 and saying it's all equal somehow, and somehow we can't look at the world and discern facts from the information that exists. There's plenty of information, and it's time to start convicting. I mean, you would be useless in terms of creating civilization because you could never convict anybody.
To fight with. And yeah, the fact that they didn't go identify, like they have many parts of themselves and they could go identify with some other channel and maybe they would have grown in a different direction. So, you know, yeah, he helps things grow in that direction. The seed is in there. It's just like if somebody is taken advantage of or whatever, it might be a narcissistic personality taking advantage of a
No, but look, you see it, okay? There were people back in the Thunderfoot days who made careful, thoughtful, and rational arguments against religious people. And then there was the Thunderfoot example where making the rational and logical argument was secondary to doing the buffooning. Let's buffoon them. Let's get into their personal life. Let's do all kinds of stuff, okay, that's just drama. So all he did was the drama part. And yes, that's what the simpletons fall for, because it doesn't require you to make anything called a thoughtful or intelligent argument.
Codependent, you know, and it's not like the codependent has to say, oh, I'm just like the other person or it's my fault or anything like that. No, just figure out it's a good thing to know, right?
Well, there's no good thing to know here, because all this information just points to the problem, which is idiocracy, which means people have opinions that they haven't done any work to acquire. They've just chosen an icon. They say, I want to be like him. I want to be 300 pounds and, you know, pour hot oil on my little inverted dick and shit like that. You know, I want to have bananas hanging out of my ass or whatever the thing is. You know, they dream of, look how admired that big fat man is, so I want to be a big, fat, admired man.
If you just dive into information and swim around in it, it's like, okay, to be specific.
Swim around in what? Again, it's sewage. It's not information. You're calling sewage information. Sewage isn't information. It's a toxic waste dump. It's a waste of your time. You will gain no nutrition from it. You'll gain nothing but a shorter life and a harder life swimming in turds.
Reading a white paper, if you know what a white paper is, or scientific paper, and a paper with an abstract. You know, I always liked reading them, even when I was really young. It was way over my head. And it's not that it stops being over your head either. I mean, depending on if you get an expertise at something. But it didn't bother me.
But clearly, yes, and in reading them, again, it's just another example that this is part of the idiocracies, right? The intellectuals now have gotten so convoluted and lost in their bullshit that they start saying things are real that they have absolutely no evidence are real. And so they start talking about concepts like, well, when the unicorn jumps through the magic ring of love, like these things really exist. None of them exist as facts. And so there's 17 layers into their bullshit. They're so deep into Wonderland that they can't see a straight building anymore, or a square window, or they've lost all connection to the real world because they're lost in their 17-dimensional wacky universe of bullshit. And then they start saying things like you. They start saying things like tunneling telescope or tunneling microscope, like it's actually a real machine. Okay, and not some synthetic thing. It's the difference between real pixels in a like a camera. This is a 58 megapixel camera when it's really a 10 megapixel camera. They just say it because, oh, the software, you know, magnifies the image preposterously and then focuses on those pixels and then pretends they're real pixels when no, they're exactly identical to the other pixels. It just made one pixel into 10 pixels and just is pretending they're real pixels when they're not. They're all the same as the other one. But we'll call it something it's not. And that's all the intellectuals are doing. They're calling a bunch of fake things real. They're just lost in bullshit.
And you hear a few terms. It's like reading science fiction. You don't have to understand every nuance of what the author put in there or was trying to put in there in order to get a few concepts and ideas out of it. You know, like...
Yeah, like what concept? Again, you know, we could just go through a list of what physics has done to reality. It's a Heisenberg principle, like it's a real thing or something that somehow the world is trying to stop us from knowing what the photon is doing. And so if we try to get any information, it will make the information harder to grasp. Like that's that's somehow a real thing when it's just a byproduct of any small universe is going to do exactly that. There's no way to make a small bit in a universe without that exact thing happening. And it has nothing to do with any principle or any notions of a principle. It just has to do with the fact that there's no tools to measure things that small with.
Hagen in Contact, you know, pointed out to me a philosophical idea that language is always, you know, a steady signal and a variation in it. That's what it needs. It's those two components.
What a pile of crap. I mean, obviously the only thing useful about language is its symbology, that it's actually the word mud means mud. It's a thing you can point to. That's what language is. Call the things something and make it accurate. Don't sit there and use the word wave when you're not talking about a wave. Don't pretend that wave means it's like a coaxial cable. How's a coaxial cable like a wave? How's an electron that has a steady momentum have a frequency? I mean, you're just breaking all the words. So you think you know what language is? Of course you don't. That's why you keep fouling it. You just keep breaking it. But you have no respect for what it is. It's supposed to be dependable and reliable, not chaotic and useless.
You know, and then I've talked to people about that, and you know, when I was in college and professors, and I learned a lot from the result of their feedback on it.
Sorry, he does get the physics. I thought it was sooner than this.
You know, I had a great professor I had a couple classes with that had a theory of language. He was a Sanskrit scholar and philosopher.
Yes, an idiot.
So, like, reading white papers, where the point I'm trying to make is you're not going to understand the whole thing. It's just going to kind of wash over you. You know, pick out a few words and whatever. That's good. It's like reading science fiction. You get it?
Yeah, right. It's like garbage. So, yes, it's like reading pseudoscience. And science shouldn't be like reading pseudoscience. It shouldn't be full of jargon, and it shouldn't be based on concepts that haven't been demonstrated to be actually real. Well, because we know photons are waves, therefore, yeah. No, you don't know that.
You know, it's not like, oh, I'm not an expert in it, or I'm going to pretend to be an expert in it. You know, you just you see how it goes. And over time, you know, like if you read a lot of certain white papers, for example, in programming, I've ended up reading a lot of white papers trying to describe a mathematical or algorithmic process. And they'll do that to various amounts of detail. You know, like they won't give you the code in your language.
Well, I guess that you need that for specific assignments you have in your work, you know, where you have to, you know, turn that mathematical concept into a functional program. But yeah, for most of us, that's really not the world we live in.
Do it in math, or not even in math. Some of it will be in words or whatever. You've got to try to pick that out. And in those kind of cases, I've actually had to get every detail of what they're saying. And if they're vague in some area, I'm going to have to fill in myself. And so in like that kind of white paper, yeah, I actually have become really good in implementing algorithms, and mathematical algorithms or functions from a white paper. But I still read scientific papers that are way over my head in many subjects, you know, and you just catch a few concepts. And then when you're reading it in some popular science.
Yeah. See, if you read them the way you watch videos, though, then I would claim it's too superficial. So all it's going to do is confuse you. You'll think it's saying what it can't be saying. You won't understand the part where they actually have evidence versus the part where they just made that part up.
You've heard it before, and you know, it pieces together faster, even though, you know, you're not trying to consume the swimming pool, you're trying to swim in the swimming pool. A similar thing is lectures, you know,
So more just a silly analogy, in my opinion. You really are trying to, as efficiently possible, grab whatever value there is in the pool to be grabbed, and then get the fuck out of the pool and move on to the next pool and the next pool and the next pool. You're not here to just waste your time going in circles and chasing figments of somebody else's imagination. You're not in the pool to be, you know, jerked around by some asshole who's just throwing bait in the pool and seeing how many assholes he can get to follow it. Being triggered by some naysaying, nitpicking asshole who's never going to have a serious conversation where you actually answer a question, yes or no.
I pretty much enjoyed lectures. I mean, some lecturers, lecturers, are not so good at it. But to me, it doesn't matter if they're flashy or charismatic to listen to. If they know how to put information into what they write on the board and into what they say, then good enough for me, and I'll tend to enjoy it.
Yeah, I'll enjoy it if they can draw a picture of it. If they can't draw a picture of it that's accurate, then I'm not going to enjoy it. It's going to annoy me. So even when Richard Feynman could draw some pictures and do these, you know, the amplitude addition is images, and yeah, that's interesting and that's fine. But yeah, when he starts drawing the two-slit experiment fucking upside down and backwards, essentially, because he has no clue how it actually works, well, yeah, that's pretty fucking annoying.
I was just realizing, because I've been paid lately a lot to kind of like read things. You know, oh, this is required reading for this contract here, so it's like I've got to read it. And I'm like, you know, I would, if I could get paid to read things, I goddamn would not. You could have me read anything. I mean, I have to be paid, you know, relatively well, probably more than you'd want to pay me for just reading things. But I'd even tell you what I thought of things. If I had to write reports on what I had read.
So again, this is all dependent on whether you think you take things that need to be taken seriously. So again, the things you think you already know, you don't pay any attention to the depth of an argument, and you just keep arguing from your same position over and over and over, and you just keep spouting the same crap even though it's been defeated as crap. You'll just keep saying it.
That,
you know, water's like a living thing because it's round and bubbly. It seems like. Prove me wrong that it doesn't seem like.
medium enjoyable. It's also like short videos versus long videos. I like long videos. I often use that over 20-minute thing they have. Now, Gary would probably criticize, because as he's well aware, because in a lot of ways Gary pays attention to certain details and doesn't distort and lie about them.
Yeah, Gary actually is the one who's watched Jeff Yee's videos. He's watched Bill D. Hilster's videos, Bob D. Hilster. He's listened to the stupid frickin' Saturday conversations. I mean, he's actually paying attention to what is being said based on what evidence. So, yeah, he actually has an informed opinion versus everybody else's bullshit, where they just say, well, yeah, that other guy has some kind of wacky theory. I didn't pay any attention to it, but I'll just say it's wrong. Yeah, no, that's bullshit.
That, you know, I multitask while I see things, but in terms of our conversations where people make video replies in the old days and whatnot, you know, I would watch those multiple times is what I would do there. And also, if I was going to reply to something, I would sit down and watch it just through as well, at least one time, not multitasking at all, because you could get it done with a blind spot, right? Keep ignoring the same things.
All right, I'll concede that maybe once in a while you actually paid attention to a subject because you wanted to make a point. So let's say if we argued thorium, all right, and we said, okay, we're gonna have a real discussion, and we're gonna discuss what the possibilities are. Okay, what's realistic in terms of this mechanism? What's its advantages and disadvantages? And maybe you would study up. But I'm just saying that most times you opine extensively based on a casual interaction with something.
That's definitely a sign of swimming in the information, right? I don't put myself on some sort of a thing of like, you're going to listen to this once and you better remember it forever. It's like, if it's that important, I can afford to listen to it a couple times. And for, you know, including movies, like there's good movies. I really appreciate, you know, I think the best movie is the movie you could watch a bunch of times and either one, enjoy it, or if not exactly enjoy, let's not define enjoy, at least.
Well, see, that's an interesting subject also. So that one you could opine a little extensively on the different ways you can watch a movie. That is, you can appreciate, some movies have great aesthetics. Like, I could argue that The Godfather 3, for example, was filmed very well. And you could point about how the plot, well, it had some interesting aspects to it, like let's implicate the Catholic Church into the mob and all that kind of stuff. So that's a nice angle, and there's some different plots that you could say are worth something, but they lost the plot, you know, in the minutia, the detail, so it just became a little too boring. You know, not enough you know, bullet holes in people's forehead. You know, you can make all these kind of arguments, critiques, but obviously some movies, again, provoke that because they have been done in such a way where, like, say, a B film is going to be so poorly filmed that almost the poor filming of it's going to mean there's less resolution, there's less detail to even notice. All right, but then the other angle there, the poorly constructed film has so many errors in it, you know, where they're wearing the wrong costume, you know, where they change their hair, where all kinds of funky shit happens, that can be an interesting motivator in the movie, is just noticing, oh, there's a gorilla over there, and there's this, you know, it's like finding the stupid stuff in the image, you know, go find the silly thing in this image, you know, the clock in the tree or whatever. So there's lots of ways to watch a movie, lots of ways for it to be intriguing. Then they could just be aesthetic in the sense the actors could be pretty, or the actors could have a certain, you know, there's some people, just by their mannerisms, they're so damn goofy that you could watch them all day long because they're just so damn goofy. You know, they're Bozo the Clown without any, without makeup.
It would invoke a certain feeling, and then it's like at least a meditation of having that feeling, right? Yeah, I'm sure everybody understands that. So the point is, if you swim in information, you can take really highbrow stuff. You can read all those scientific papers and whatnot, and not lie to yourself that you do understand, and not worry that you don't understand. And because if you just swim through it, when you get out, you'll find certain ideas or concepts. You're going, hey, I had an idea. As a matter of fact, the danger is you'll be like, hey, I just had.
What you'll find, in my opinion, is that they take a tiny seems like and draw it into a hard, it's factually real. There's a clock in the tree, therefore clocks must live in trees.
You won't realize it was you having a delayed understanding of something that you had read. And it's like, well, that's too bad because you don't know to give credit. There's ways to solve that, but even if you don't solve that, I mean, isn't it just better that you got a new idea? Maybe you think you invented it when in reality it was an after effect, but at least you get...
Well, most of that is so tangential that it wouldn't matter. It's like the other day, I'm watching a guy's video where he's spinning a magnetic disc over a piece of aluminum, and obviously that image could make me think about acceleration and momentum, and I could think about, well, yeah, there's no centrifugal force, there's just the binding force, and and the thing's motion. If I'm going to spin a disc in outer space, well, when I spin it, I'm actually going to move it, instead of spin it, because I'm not putting any tension on the middle piston thing. So really, when something's getting spun, the force isn't really going down, the force is going the other way against the friction point, and so it's really gravity that's pushing it down. So I actually thought about that bicycle wheel thing, when the guy holds the bicycle wheel spinning on a chair that has a movable bearing, and he moves in the direction of the rotation, the opposite direction of the rotation. I'm saying, why is that happening? Because gravity is pushing down on the wheel, and the top part of the bearing has more friction than the bottom part of the bearing, obviously, right? I mean, obviously the wheel puts more friction on the top bearing than on the bottom of the bearing. So obviously the greater friction is creating the opposite reaction. The wheel is basically throwing the piston, the axle, this way, because of the greater friction going this way than going that way. So just because of gravity is why this happens. So yeah, I've explained that now. And tangentially, right, it's based on, oh, I saw this thing spinning, and it made me think about spinning. So it's not like I should really give Richard Ritchie credit, right, because it's so disconnected. I could have been any spinning object that inspired the thoughts.
He is. Hopefully good ones. All right. So, it's not that water is alive. It's just like a drop of water.
Yeah, it's not like. So, again, why even have the conversation? Why say the word alive just means it looks like it's alive. So robots are alive because they look like they're alive. So a fake dog is alive because it looks like a dog. I mean, it's just stupid. And this isn't really physics, but this is his whole fucking. This is why he's so fucking hateable, is because he pretends to have some goddamn give a damn about the integrity of language, words, logic, being a logician. And here he'll sit there and play this stupid game that we don't know what the essence of our complexity is, which is this fucking thing with 100 billion neurons in it. And he just pretends they're not doing anything important. They're not there for anything. They're just superfluous. That's not what makes you alive.
Living cell. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying when you drink a glass of water, like, oh, hey, I just drank a half quart of water. I now have a half quart more of consciousness. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's like that. It's as
I'm just saying it's like it. No, it's nowhere anywhere near like it. It's nothing like it. If you take the damn thing seriously, the mimics are nothing like the real thing. The papier-mâché model of the woman is not the woman.
Okay, I wanted to mention, because obviously it's totally on topic to everything I've said so far. So
I guess he's getting around to reading comments. I posted a comment like a year ago. You know, the truth should be the objective. The only objective. So that was way back in the conversation. So just lost to the ether.
There's some comments over there. So I'm going to talk about Kamala and Tulsi, and not really, is it Gillibrand? Or Gillibrand? Gillibrand. But first I wanted to mention, I've been talking to David the Hillster, and I'm going to talk to him, hopefully in the next week or two, about various things. His dad and his particular theories.
So I bet he won't do enough research to be able to talk about that rationally at all. So that's just going to be more wasted time, because he's not going to really analyze what they're saying, which is first that the Earth is expanding, one of their arguments, and that there's some force moving the speed of light squared that's controlling where photons go. I mean, the whole thing is made out of shit as concepts.
The theories of some other dissident scientists that he knows. I would definitely like to...
Yes, well, again, he doesn't have any idea what my theory is. He hasn't spent enough time to understand it one little tiny bit, but if he paid any attention at all, he wouldn't be calling his theory the particle model. His mind's got better particles in it. A lot better.
About his definition of dissident science,
which is any tinfoil hat will do. Christian, Muslim science, those are the best kinds. I love those Christian and Muslim scientists trying to prove God exists, because that's how you get to the truth. No, it's not. I'm being sarcastic, just in case anybody doesn't know. I'm being sarcastic.
Specifically with reference to whether I would count, because I think I count, but I'm not necessarily...
I don't know if you count. How do you count? You sit there and make excuses and justifications for every wacky theory conventional physics has. I don't think there's been a single wacky particle they could invent that you would say isn't real. You buy into every piece of crap they spread on the toast. You'll eat anything. The wackier, the better.
But I do have my own non-conventional views. It's just that they're also compatible with sort of the data as I understand it.
Yeah, as you understand it. That's a good point, right? Because I don't think it has anything to do with actual evidence. That is, actual understanding of the experiments and how they actually function. Because if you paid any attention at all, as I have, you'd find the huge flaws in what they're saying, how the thing damn works. That their evidence is insanely weak, not insanely strong. All you have to do is go look at the Eddington experiment, the one that got Einstein onto smooth sailing, an easy ride right to the Nobel Prize. And it was garbage. No hope of being decisive in any way whatsoever, of really answering the question in any kind of authoritative or substantial way. Quoting the guy who did the experiment, who had a huge boner for Einstein, I wouldn't stake my life on these results. Yet the New York Times headline didn't quote that. No, Einstein right.
course, not with every scientific mainstream theory, since a lot of those are contradictory. I mean, you could find particle physicists that say, "Oh no, it's all particles. There's no wave field thing." And
show me one, please. Show me one, just one. Show me one particle physics person who actually believes in particles.
Field theorists that are like, "Well, there's no particles. Those are just a remnant of the experiment."
Doublespeak, exactly. They just have a complete doublespeak. Why would honest people need to use dishonest language? Why if they have the truth, do they have to veil it in these fake words?
Hopefully, we're going to do that on my channel here.
It will be a discussion of mush. Mush on mush. That's all it's going to be. A bunch of vague, mushy, "Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's interesting. Let's talk about, the nature of hair to be itchy when it's in certain locations. Oh, that's a good theory. You think hair's alive? It feels like it's getting dried out. It's thirsty."
And just dissident science. I think it's a good word for it. There's a lot of ways. I would have just called it non-mainstream theorists or something like that. But
yeah, well, it just doesn't matter. There's wrong and wronger. Okay, there's professional religious people and amateur religious people. They're dissidents for the sake of being dissident. They're dissident because they don't like the theme of the story. There's some atheists who aren't atheists because they understand evolution. They're atheists because they don't like the idea of a God. I don't like being told what to do. That's their protest. They're not atheists because they have demonstrated that logically this is an unfounded, silly proposition. They're just atheists because, oh, he's against me raping chicks. Well, that doesn't really work as an analogy, right? Because the Bible really doesn't give a shit about rape.
That's trouble. There's trouble there too, because the thing is, science itself has a bunch of contradictory things that are getting funded. So it's easy to go, well, they're all mainstream because they're getting funded, but they're contradictory with each other, right? And then there's things that aren't getting funded by academics that want to get them funded, and they're like, why does nobody want to fund this research? It's really interesting. And then
and then none of them are doing the basic research. So none of them are actually trying to demonstrate that some of the things they've been saying for 100 years are actually true. Like, well, maybe we should prove photons can be bent by gravity instead of just keep saying it. Maybe we ought to prove it somewhere. Maybe we ought to prove that photons are a wave by actually demonstrating how the wave happens and it works without just saying magical things like, well, it just does this magical Huygens. It makes an infinite little baby waves, and the infinite number of baby waves all add up, and then they subtract, and then they figure out all this crap, and then the thing ends up going over there. What? And what part of that did you demonstrate with evidence? Oh, that's right. Not a single part of it demonstrated with a piece of evidence.
People that are outside of the mainstream, where like somebody would be a funding source might get a bad reputation if they funded that kind of research, and so they don't. What is that spectrum? What is it that bugs him? Because he's so open-minded to different kinds of theories.
No, he's open-minded to the fact that he's running an organization full of nutters, and he obviously can't offend them too much. He seems okay with offending them a certain amount, and pretending, but he just likes playing the role. I'm king of my little silly group, and so it's just about keeping the group together, and that's it. But clearly all the dissidents don't pay any attention to each other. Again, they ridicule each other without even paying any attention really to what the other guy's saying.
Scientists. Like Jeff Yee's theory of particles, if you know what that is.
Yeah, he originally called it particles of the universe, and I kind of gave him a little heat for it because he doesn't believe in particles. He believes in jellyfish. So it should be jellyfish of the universe. And again, it's all pretty. He makes a nice pretty presentation. He speaks incredibly well. He's very articulate, careful, smooth. But the whole thing is just bullshit. I mean, pentaquarks.
Be one-to-one with available data, right? So it's...
So again, it's just where? Show me. Okay, so you have this impression that there's one-to-one correlations with the actual experimental data. Well, why don't you show me that? Show me where he's illustrated a real experiment in the real world and demonstrated how this thing functions. Because I haven't seen any of those mock-ups or those illustrations. There's just some magical notion that there's a bunch of this wave energy that comes from the inside of the matter. Again, it's like a pull theory of some kind. The energy comes from inside of stuff by this magical, little heartbeats inside of shit. But at least he's accounting for the energy, which is better than bent space. But there's no way to make this make any sense. He has standing waves where there's no reflections, which is impossible, by the way.
It's definitely different from David's and his dad's idea of the particle system, and it's not the same kind of approach, even though it's not the same particular field as the whole, though it overlaps the whole expanding Earth tectonics.
Yeah, complete lunacy. So why don't you just get to the real point? Why don't you just say something like, well, who explains magnetism the best? And give him the prize.
So why can Jeff have all this weird different idea from David's and so on, but is it just because you're funded? I think there's a part of it that has something to do with that, like that it's an unfair allocation of our society's scientific resources or something like that.
No, it's just about, there's people who care about explaining evidence, and there's people who just care about making up stories. So there's people competing with the made-up stories by making up their own stories. So they don't like Goldilocks, so they change it from Goldilocks and the Three Bears to Goldilocks and the 17 Mongooses. And they think they've improved the story somehow. And it's not an improvement in the story, it's the same horse shit. And there's people like me who point to the evidence and say, let's talk about the experiments and what can be concluded rationally from them.
So, talking to David, he's a really nice guy. I've always been interested in this kind of stuff. I feel...
Yeah, well, he should appeal to Pyrrho because he's a guy who does, tango or whatever. He's a dancer and a prancer and an artist and all that kind of horse shit. So all of this is blended into the physics is just as mushy and vaporous and wooey and blah blah blah. Dinosaurs are too big. I proved it with they're too fat theory. Too jiggly thing. Proved it.
There's a tremendous amount of, here's an example that works both ways. Okay, string theory. I was always of the idea that, well, it's just mathematics and it's not testable, and then they started to make these huge colliders, and I'm like, well, it's testable now because it predicts certain particles these colliders will find. Then they made the
well, again, this whole idea that it predicts something, I think, is another pile of crap, okay? It's obviously can't predict anything because it has to create extra dimensions for one purpose. The extra dimensions are for pushing all the mathematical errors under a rug. The only reason why the extra dimensions exist is because it doesn't make any sense in 3 dimensions. It's fundamentally imbalanced, and so the only way they can fix it is they gotta shove the imbalances into another dimension so they go away for a while. It's horse shit. And again, show me how it explains how a magnet works. Show me one example how any string theory, convoluted theory, this equation of everything, how that stupid fucking equation explains the difference between a magnet's attraction and repulsion. Show me where it does that.
And they haven't found any of the particles from string theory, supersymmetry specifically.
Yeah, there's no particles in string theory. That's why it's called string theory. It's because there are no particles in it. There's just a bunch of vibrating worms. And the worms can be in circles, or the worms can be free worms.
May modify their idea and still call that idea string theory, 8.9. But the fact is, the string theory that was starting to be accepted, supersymmetry,
it's just another wave theory. You might as well call it Jeff Yee theory in a way, right? Because it just says the origin of the energy in the universe is happening inside the dead matter, and that it doesn't come from the force on the outside. So it's another dopey, stupid, wrong answer. The universe has every appearance of something collapsing, and here they are making the energy inside the thing that's collapsing. Does that make any sense? If the energy was in the little bits, then the little bits would all be moving away from each other, not collapsing into each other. That's what they need the extra dimensions for, is because it doesn't make any frickin' sense.
It fell apart. And, science is admitting that it fell apart.
Bullshit. I mean, again, so Sean Carroll just interviewed Mark, the green guy, and he hasn't given up because of this. It's still, well, no, we're still in the game. We're still playing string game. Till they prove it can't work. Yeah, we're hanging on.
But anyway, it yielded a lot of good mathematical techniques. And it...
Name one.
Probed into a lot of property interactions or whatever, in the sense of mathematical relationships over time of various
Yes, again, so this is the whole problem with all the physics, is again more of these mathematical relationships that aren't based on what three-dimensional law says they have to fit into. None of them fit into reality, just like Einstein's infinite well is infinitely stupid. It doesn't make any sense to assume the universe has an infinite supply of pressure to just keep flying down your wells. You can make the drain as big as you want to because somehow the universe has water to fill it.
Systems, just the very idea of modeling the whole physical system as a 10 or 11 or whatever dimensional thing and seeing, what's the smallest number of dimensions. It's kind of like Penrose with tiling.
And again, you can't model, you can't make up these extra dimensions and make them fit any of the confinements of regular dimensions, so there's really no point. I mean, as I pointed out in the previous video, the three dimensions have a quality. And once you add a fourth dimension, you break those qualities. And one of the qualities is that two of the three dimensions are in the same plane and one of them's off plane. If I add a fourth dimension, I'm breaking that asymmetry. As if it wasn't somehow fundamental. And it may well be fundamental to how all of Maxwell's equations work. If you add another dimension, you've broken those equations. You've lost perpendicular.
The smallest number of tiles you could have, that you could tile a space for infinity without repeating yourself. What's the smallest number of tiles to be able to make an unrepeating pattern? String theory mathematically asked and answered questions like that, even though it turned out it wasn't a physical theory. So, and also I actually want to talk to him.
So it turns out it wasn't a physical theory, so what the hell, what was the value of it again? Oh, yeah, nothing, no value.
Because, yeah, I mean, it's been very slow getting out. But well before the Higgs, before they, got it fixed and could look for the Higgs, they should have found these other particles. And so in the better science press and closer to the science...
Well, the truth is, right, the accelerator they had before that was in the same tunnel that they had spent a fortune on and that they destroyed after only 10 years of use... had already discovered a hint of the Higgs. So let's not pretend it didn't already have the pieces of it. And they were just looking for a way to get a better picture of it. But it's still nothing. The Higgs field isn't really a thing. They didn't really find anything. they're just looking at their own, you know, they're looking at their own voltage in their own experiment. I mean, they're plowing so much energy into these systems to make these little particles move, and they can't tell the difference between the energy they're putting in and the particles they're moving.
People don't do a bunch of hype. Nobody wanted to make a big deal of supersymmetry. We've been making TED Talks about this shit, about guys, you know, graduate students surfing on the beach inventing this theory. Oops.
Yeah, no, it's really such a minor oops, because I don't think there was more than 15 people in the whole world who gave a fucking shit about string theory. So you can say that somebody cared, but I'm saying go ahead, show me the popular videos on string theory. Show me the PBS popular video on string theory, because it doesn't exist.
You know, they didn't want to, nobody wants to make a big promotion of that. Even the people that disagreed with supersymmetry in science don't necessarily want to make a big deal of it. That just makes everybody look bad or whatever. So I guess it's been really slow coming out, but yeah.
It's fringe in a fringe. Physics has already fringed itself by being Alice in Wonderland, and it's just Alice in Wonderland squared. It's not a, it's in no way an advancement or an improvement. It's just a sideways step in Wonderland. Go a little deeper into the rabbit hole of bullshit.
String theory thing does turn out to be just a bunch of math. And the thing is, though, probably it'll have some relevance. It's just like, you know, conic sections where you have two cones, and if you slice them different ways, you get ellipses and circles and hyperbolas and parabolas and all the shapes that you get from gravitational art.
Yes, and you can figure out that all of them are made out of something called a circle. Just as there's square geometry, there's spherical geometry, right? And you can make lots of shit out of spheres and lots of shit out of squares.
Inverse R law kind of.
It's like I can make lots of numbers out of a 1, and I can make lots of numbers out of a 2.
And so it was just mathematically frivolous, but it did turn out to have a physical application in the end, which is one of the funny, weird, unexplainable things about math. And
bullshit. Didn't have anything in the end. Didn't do anything in the end. It's all just bullshit. It's all your same old hype that quantum mechanics gave us, whatever, flushable toilets. Bullshit.
And just patterns in reality. So it's almost like reality contains every pattern. So if you make a new mathematics, it's just a matter of time before you find a pattern that is well explained by it, needs it, or whatever.
So that would be another good conversation for people to have. What is the nature of mathematics? Is it, as I state, merely a formalization of something we already see? We see something, and all we're doing is formalizing a mechanism to describe the effect. Why does the effect happen? What can I observe to be the variables, and how do I arrange those variables to predict the outcome? And that's all it is. It's a simplification, a formalization, formula, okay, of the essential variables. That's all it is. It's not the magical road to understanding why something happens. It's describing effects. It doesn't describe causes.
But string theory is a physical theory, not true. And I feel that way about all of the dissident science stuff. But what's unfortunate is I found it's very hard to talk to the so-called dissident scientists.
No, it isn't. It's very easy to make these videos, frankly. Doesn't take hardly any work at all. You say crappy, stupid, retarded shit, and I point out how, well, that's crappy, stupid, retarded. You don't have any evidence for that. That's never been proven. Why don't we have a real conversation about what math's doing? You're saying math is this wonderful way that shows you reality. It gives you vision, gives you insight, makes giant lenses so your eyes can see much further. It doesn't do any of that shit. Why don't you show me this mathematical lens to reality? Because they don't exist. It's more likely to be funhouse mirrors, your math, because they're such simplifications. They're so crude and they're so underdeveloped. Just like the two-slit math. Let's change the variable, right? One equation, D means the opening. The next equation, it means the impediment. I mean, You know, what the fuck?
Let's see. Oh yeah, there was some comments. I'll just see some comments. I have still. Camel.
I mean, how does that add clarity when the variables aren't even consistently identified? That's not clarity. That's called confusion.
We'll see what to talk about. Okay. Let's see. Stable, genius, progressive. None of these people might be here now. Who knows how long they would. Hey, Pyrrho. DraftScience. Oh, hey, DraftScience. The truth should be.
Yes, likewise. Squared.
Be the objective, the only objective. Truth. Well, to me, there's a variety of candidates for being the truth.
There we go. So it's the same as the D. Hilster bullshit. So he's saying that all of this crap is somehow equal. Flat Earth theory just as good as this theory, is that theory, is that theory, is that theory, and we just don't have any capacity to make any kind of competent evaluation about what was really bad science. Now, was it good science or bad science for everybody to cite the Young experiment? Was the Young experiment in some way an advance, a huge new innovative improvement and addition to our information? Or was it just recycling something Newton did 150 fucking years sooner? And just pretending you forgot? Is that good science, forgetting what Newton already did? Those are obvious questions that have obvious answers. Obvious answers to demonstrating they have a huge bias. Okay, a sound engineer obsessed with waves. That's who Young is, right? It's all about his motivation, just like Huygens' motivation against Newton. The only thing that matters is because these are the guys who believe in our ether and our waves. These aren't the guys who are doing this mechanical universe thing. So obviously their bias, this is all bias science. It's all science trying to prove their religion. It isn't science for the purpose of finding the truth. Clearly, people after the truth will not sit there and say, go ahead and tell me it's both a wave and a particle. Go ahead, say that to me. And tell me you know something about reality. Bullshit, you know anything.
And while we're trying to figure out what the truth is, we have to have a bunch of candidates to consider. Jesus Perez.
Again, so that's not what the argument's about. The argument is about there are truths that we can decide, and you won't decide those. You won't pay any attention to the fact that there is arguments that can be made here. They are to be had. There are crimes to prove, and you're just sitting there and playing this game that I don't want responsibility for this obligation to pay any attention to. There might be something obviously that's a true fact somewhere in this mush. You don't want there to be a reality, because I think you have every indication in your little brain is telling you if we have a fair trial, my woo is going to lose.
Information is subjective. We all exist in a matrix made up of only info which we personally let in. Fake news, understand?
Personally let in. Again, we don't personally do anything, okay? We do it by program. We do it by knowledge. And if you don't have to be on Earth very long to figure out that everybody's lying to you, okay? That's how I figured it out. And so you do become skeptical. You don't take anybody's word for shit. You go look it up yourself. You don't just sit there and trust anybody because, yeah, they're usually full of shit and they're just basing it on, 2 weeks experience. Oh, well, we studied 3.5 people and found out this drug cures cancer. I mean, it's just all crap, so you can't trust any of it. So you figure out how to be your own detective and say, okay, I have to go listen to this, and I have to listen to that, and I have to make comparisons and say who's talking shit and who's not talking shit. It's on us. If you think the world is going to throw good food at you and only good food, that's not how the world works. The world is full of people with biases and prejudice, a bunch of religious nuts trying to mold reality into the shape of their gods, and they're going to keep throwing their totem poles in front of you and say it's a dinosaur, it's a real artifact. I didn't just carve it, it's real. It's God.
want us to even be open to other points of view. Well, yeah, that's true, except for you say we exist in a matrix made up of only the info we personally let in. Right. But you can change the filter.
Yeah, well, the filter isn't even important. What's important is testing. All of this shit has to be tested. So why don't we go find the people willing to be tested and find the people unwilling to be tested? And what's clear is the dissident community is full of people who have no interest in being tested.
You let in, right? So, you know, it's not like it's limited, but yeah, it's subjective from your point of view. But if you go ahead.
Look, the only way to do this is to keep having trials, and everybody's afraid of trials, right? Isn't that the obvious fact? Nobody will allow there to be a trial. Everything has to be by settlement. As I pointed out with that argument between the electric boom guy and Walter Lewin. What did they do? It was another case that needed to go to court. There needed to be a decision. The hammer needed to be whacked down authoritatively. Yes, no, it's bullshit or it's not bullshit. And instead, they made a settlement. They decided, okay, I'll give you $10. You give me 13 goldfish and we'll call it even. They bullshit it out. They weasel out. And that's all this dissident science bullshit is. It's just a bunch of weaseling out. Let's not take a stand on anything. Let's pretend all this shit is somehow equal. It's not all equal. Some of it is, the people are clearly fucking eccentric lunatics. I mean, they're not even close to being in reality. They're just talking tongues. Well, there's this ether burp, and the ether burp was the first burp, and the burp will evolve through the universe, and it's sort of like rolling through the colon of the universe after a while, and then the burp turned into a fart, and the fart was odorous to all the other particles, and they all banged away, saying, I can't stand this place, I have to get out of here. So they all ran away from the original ether fart. I mean, it's all fucking bullshit! Hairy, nasty shit. I mean, there isn't one grain of anything in it. It's just pure, 100% shit.
All of the information you have available, it's quite a lot. And if you value other people's perspective as well, as a way of getting beyond.
Again, that's the whole issue. What's the value? They show they have no integrity, that they're really just about, I'm going to prove there's a God, and Venus crashed into the Earth and then went back to where it was playing, and, you know, that's what happened. Blah, 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 blah. Horseshit. I say photons are bent by light. Bent by gravity. Twice as much as every other particle in the universe just because Einstein said so. I don't need no evidence.
Your personal subjective point of view. You receive information about their point of view through your own subjective point of view still, and yet it also is enlightening. Yeah, what we let in is subjective, but you can take that into account. I mean, I just think that's why...
You can take it into account that you're a bigoted asshole. Right, you can, but you have to admit you're a bigoted asshole to do it. And that's what nobody else is willing to do. No one else has this mechanism that says, okay, the first rule is... what is my bias? That's the first thing as a detective I have to look for is, am I going to try to make the ugly butler guilty or the hot wife guilty? Do I have a bias there? You know. Yeah.
Well, that's what the swimming in information thing is about. You just dive into the information. Don't worry. You don't have to let it in or not. Feel it.
Feel it. So again, just more mush. Like somehow you can feel the truth. Oh, fuck. No, it's a tedious process of being able to tell the difference. You have to do this tedious crap to find out the subtle differences. But again, some of them are so unsubtle. Like the difference between push and pull is so obvious. And the fact that one makes absolutely no sense as an explanation, and one makes complete sense as an explanation. That one is so obvious. How much testing does it take? I mean, if we could actually take push versus pull to court, Do you think the Pullites are going to have a single piece of evidence on their side? That they're going to be able to come up with one single possible example in the real world that's really a pull? Just one? They're going to have nothing. And the push is going to have everything. I mean, it's going to have videotapes of pushes happening all over the place and people calling them pulls. Millions and millions of them. Pushing on a rope to pull up something. They're going to have it all over the place. The pushes. The little subtle push of the wheel spinning this way. And the fact that gravity is putting the weight on the frickin' axle. And that's why the axle moves this way. It's because there's more friction on the top than there is on the bottom. I think I've done my job here.
Don't drink the poison. You know, don't drink every water. You know, you don't have to drink every water.
Well, again, they can't tell the difference because you do have to go to school. Some of these differences are subtle, like the Heisenberg principle. You have to be a little bit kind of intelligent to understand, oh, the reason why that's not really a principle is because there's no way to tell the difference between the fact that we can't measure something and it's unmeasurable. Like, well, yeah, if I can't measure it, it could be that it's unmeasurable, but the simple answer might be, I can't measure it. Duh! I mean, it's a little bit subtle. Takes a little bit of kind of a contextual understanding to know they just made it up, and it's very convenient that you can't prove it wrong because you can't measure it to prove them wrong. Damn it. We can see the catch-22s. We can see the engineered bullshit. But you do have to be a little bit experienced and knowledgeable in bullshitology to be able to do it. You can't just be trusting people and buying it because, oh, Brian Greene is so special. I love it. He's so animated and fun. If that's how you're deciding who's talking shit or not, then you're going to fail.
Right? When you drink water, that's some special water you're a little careful about. Jesus says, Tulsi's great. That's why the media has neutralized her with slander.
Whatever. Whatever this... So anyway, we're done. He's going to get into some kind of political crap about people with unpronounceable names. Great. It's so super. I love it. I love all this multicultural crap where people don't even fucking pronounceable names. No, I'm being sarcastic again. I don't love it. I actually hate it. I despise it. It's all vomit worthy. So anyway, till next time, such.